Okay, so welcome back to the second episode of my podcast or channel, whatever you want to call it. Today I am back with a second uh, episode, and this one is going to be about kind of philosophy slash Epictetus. Uh, I'm not a philosophy professor or anything of the sort, but I do love to read philosophy and learn about philosophy. My taste in philosophy is not going to be your typical uh, YouTuber's taste in philosophy. I'm not the biggest fan of Plato or I haven't read much on Aristotle, and it's mainly just because I like to read what I like to read, and I don't read something just because somebody tells me to. And so, I've tried them, couldn't really get through the books or whatever. And so I like to read what I like to read. And Epictetus, I really enjoyed to read. The first book I ever read of his was the Enchiridion, and it's so short. It's like the book that I had was like 30 pages. I read it in one night. Uh, and it's so good. It's like the thing is, like I've already reread it multiple times, and the thing is about Epictetus is that like his his advice is very simple, and that's kind of a thing in Stoic philosophy, but his advice is very simple, but it's so real. It just relates so much to your life. And when you actually sit back and look at what he said, you it's hard not to be like, damn, like where was he, you know, 10 years ago or 5 years ago or whenever it was. So, I encourage everybody to start reading Epictetus as soon as you read this. And even if you don't like him, you don't like him. But he is somebody that, like, if you've never read him before and you read him for the first time, you're like, whoa. Or like you've never really read philosophy before. He's a great entry point, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, the Enchiridion is super easy, like literally like 30 pages. I don't know how long it took me in minutes to read the book, but like probably under an hour for sure, if I had to say. Um, but yeah, one of the biggest things about Epictetus is that he was a former slave. He was born in what is now modern day Turkey. Um, So, in when he was born, I forgot the exact year, but it was like 55 BC or something like that. Um, or AC, maybe or AD. Um, but it wasn't necessarily countries at that time. It was kind of like by empires, and he was born in what was modern day Turkey, and he became a slave in Rome to Emperor Nero's secretary. So, he was in Rome for a while. I don't know the whole timelines on everything. Like, I'm just gonna be straight up. Like, I'm not a biographer or a historian. I'm just kind of teaching you about the things I like to learn about and what I know about him. So, like, my, little bullet point biography of him isn't gonna be as in detailed maybe as you want it, and that's fine. Um, and so he was a slave for a long time. And one of the famous stories when he was a slave is his master was twisting his leg, like trying to break it. And Epictetus was warning him, like, if you keep doing this, it's going to break. And he broke his leg, and Epictetus calmly responded, "Did I not tell you it was going to break?" That's it. That's the story. I mean, like he embodied his philosophy. As much as he spoke about philosophy, he lived it. Like he truly did live it. And that's something that I'm not going to say necessarily that most people didn't live up to, but he is one of the few examples of people that actually lived his philosophy. And so he was lame. He walked with a limp pretty much for the rest of his life, and never really complained about it. Didn't say much about it. It just was what it was. He just had to deal with it. And then so eventually he gained his freedom from slavery, and he taught philosophy in Rome for a while. Had some students, uh, and then all philosophers. I forgot which emperor did it, but basically banned all philosophers from Rome. So he moved to Greece, where he kept teaching basically until his death. And there's pretty much two books out there that are his, which is the Enchiridion, and I believe the other one is called Discourses. Um, and he never wrote them. It's just like what his students um, learned and wrote down of what he talked about, because he would give them, lectures and discourses and whatnot. And that's one of the other things that I like about him, is because, well, one of the things, I guess there's kind of two caveats to that. One would be like, nothing is his necessarily true perspective. It's what other people gathered from him, which is fine, but he doesn't really get to defend himself. And then the other one would be, he's not writing this to try to sell a book. He's not changing his advice to gain followers. This is who he has, a few kind of disciples who like to listen to him, and this is what he says to them. And that's something that, like, you can't fake that. Everything is going to be raw. Everything is going to be authentic to what he truly wanted his students to know. Um, and so there's a few things that he really focused on, and he has lots of different, quotes, and obviously things are translated, so nothing is going to be perfect as to what he said. But one of his probably biggest one, and my favorite one, would be the dichotomy of control, is what people call it. That's like the terminology for it. But essentially what he is saying is that there are some things in life that are up to you. Your judgments, your choices, your desires, your actions, the things that you truly can control. And it's not as much as there is things that you cannot control. And there are majority of things that you cannot control. You can't control, how tall you are. Uh, you can't control what other people do. You can't control what other people think about you necessarily. You can influence it, but you can't control it. You can't control the outcomes of events, really. I mean, you can control what you do, what you put into them, but you cannot control, you know, what happens. And you cannot control the past. You can't control the future either, really. I mean, you can influence things, but you cannot control them. And that is one of the biggest things that most people really never realize, and people spend so much time in life stressing about the things that they never control. I was on a walk yesterday, and I was thinking about this. One of the things to me that is kind of stupid that I do this with, is the weather. For some reason, the weather gets me mentally. It's like the weather almost dictates my mood. Like, if it's shitty weather, I'm going to be in a shitty mood. Why that is, I have no clue. I have no clue. And I can't seem to get over that hump. Um and so, it's something that I literally have zero control over. I mean, you can't do anything about the weather. Yet I get upset about it, or I have these thoughts and feelings and emotions about it. And it's like, for what? It's just the weather. So, I don't really know why that is. And that's something that I will obviously have to work on. And it's really not that big of a deal. It's just the weather. Uh, but, that's kind of an example of where it's brought into real life, is, there are these things that you care about so much, or have these emotions and feelings about, that they don't care about you. The weather could give a care what you think about it. The weather doesn't have thoughts. Well, I hope. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it does. But you can only focus on what you can control, which is not that much. Like, there's really not a whole lot of things that you can control in life. And so that's where it's like, you know, uh, a quote unquote good life is really a simple one, because you know when you have all these external factors and things that you have to think about, and try to control, or have these feelings about whatever, whatnot, it it's a losing game. It's a losing game. you know um but being tied to all these materialistic things, and don't get me wrong, I'm a materialist, so don't get me distorted with this kind of person who's detached from material items. But when you are attached to these material items, and something happens to them, it's really hard to realize, like, if you break your MacBook, it's really hard to realize, like, that's really just, a couple pieces of metal, a little bit of plastic, and some chips that people put together. It's hard to realize that at the time, because there's so much on that you care about. But, being a materialist and caring about things that you have no control over is going to cause lots of stress in your life. And that's not me discouraging anybody uh from being a materialist or caring about material things, because I'm, just as guilty of that. Um and then another one of his big sort of ideas and things he would talk about was that it's not actually the events that occur that upset us. It's our judgments and our opinions on what happened. So, uh, it's not the fact that you got into a car accident that makes you upset about the accident. It's actually your opinion that getting in a car accident is bad, or your judgment that somebody else ran into you on purpose, uh, or whatever it might be. Your opinion of what happened. So you can view it as, damn it, like my car is totaled, like I can't drive this anymore. This is terrible. Or you can simply view it as, I got in a car accident. My car is totaled. That's it. There's nothing else that you have to say or think. It can just be what it is. And that's something that I need to work on personally. That's something that I think is very important. But I really try a lot to try to find that in my life as well. Because I think that's something very important that you can come to. Because not everything has to be, you know, not everything has to make you happy or sad or mad. It can just be, an event that happened, and that's simply what it is. Um, you know, eh, yeah. I mean, that one's a very simple one. It's very straightforward, and it's simple but hard, because it's really hard to realize, when something happens that, you know, it's not the event. It's your opinion on the event. Um, and you know that's that's something that most people probably never accept or come to terms with. I mean, ever in their life. And I certainly haven't. I mean, it's very hard to really grip that one. Um, and then the last one, and he has many, different ideas and things he likes to talk about, but I just kind of picked some of the ones that I really like, because these are the ones that are important to me, and that's what this podcast is about, just kind of what I like. And that is that freedom is not getting everything you want. Freedom is not being able to buy things, go places, have people and things. Um, it is simply not being owned by what you can't control. It is not the freedom to. That is a different kind of freedom. That is like material freedom. What people truly desire, and it's almost hidden, is freedom from. Freedom from, you know, freedom from the emotions that cause, stress, or freedom from yourself, almost like you you cause yourself so much pain that, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna give an analogy because that's kind of the way I like to do it. So I'm just gonna say, like, for example, like, maybe, you had a family member die, and sure, it's unfortunate that that happened, and I'm not taking that away from anybody. But when you continue and continue and continue to sort of harp on that and think about how you're never going to see this person again and you're going to miss them so much, you're causing yourself that pain. You know, I think some initial grieving is okay and acceptable. Um, and but there's a difference between, the initial grieving and dragging it on. And the dragging it on and the causing yourself, you're like locking yourself up in a mental prison, and you need freedom from that, or you desire freedom from that. I'm not saying you need it, you desire it, even though you may not know it. But that is something that I have really realized over the last couple of years, in kind of my journey of life, is that actually it's not necessarily the material things that I want. It's almost the freedom from myself that I want. And it's ego is a term a lot of people use, but I find ego to be a very hard thing to define. And so I'm not gonna sit here and say that you want freedom from ego. Um, because I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, I don't know. I need to think, have more thinking on that. But yeah, I mean, you want freedom kind of, sorry, from yourself. Um, or at least that's the thing a lot of people desire. And now I'm gonna go through a couple quotes of his that I like. Uh, things that really sort of resonate with me that maybe will resonate with you. Maybe they won't. That's okay. But here are just a few of the quotes from him that I really like. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that truly matters. And that's sort of along the lines of, it's not the events that upset us, but our opinions and judgments on them. Uh, you know, you can have family members die, you can be enslaved, someone can break your leg, and that is you cannot control that. You can't control what happens to other people, but what you can control is your judgments and opinions on those events. And you can choose to really not have a judgment or opinion on the event, or choose to have a bad one, or maybe a good one. But a lot of times it's hard to have a good opinion on a death. You know, uh, there's a lot of coping mechanisms that people use with death, and it's probably our biggest fear as humans. Um, but there's no way around it because everybody is going to die. Whether you want to accept that or not, it's going to happen. No man is free who is not a master of himself. And that's kind of the thing that's like the freedom from yourself, sort of mastering yourself. Uh, you know, that's one that really I think is freedom is probably one of the biggest things that drives me in life, business, relationships, etc. Freedom is something that I really desire. And it's something that you think you know how to achieve it, but you don't even know what it is that you want. And so it's like you're sort of, you know, going down a path with no ending, and you can't get to where you want to go if there's no ending. And then the last one is wealth consists in not having great possessions, but having few wants. And then that kind of, goes into line with it. And it's like the person who is truly wealthy in life is not necessarily the person with the most money, but the person who is the most content with where they're at, who doesn't desire to be another person in another place with more things and more money. It is the person who who just lives their life and doesn't desire a different life from the one that they have. Um, and that's another thing that I personally am really trying to work on and figure out how to embody that in myself. And it's really hard because it's very conflicting because I'm a person who is very I desire money and I desire a successful life, but I also desire to be free from that life. So it's very conflicting, and it's hard as a younger person in choosing which one you is right for you. And I don't know that you ever really figure that out. Uh, you know, uh, there's a quote from Naval, and this is just hearsay. I don't exactly remember the quote, but he essentially says like, achieve all of your material desires, and then decide if you want to pursue this sort of spiritual slash mental journey that is essentially shedding these desires. Because if you never get them, I don't know that you'll ever be able to turn that off in the back of your head. So I don't know. There's a lot of different options and ways to approach that, and I don't know that you ever really figure out the right one. But yeah, so that's just kind of my little commentary on Epictetus. I'm sure I'll talk a lot more about him, down the line, and I'm hoping to be pumping out a bunch of episodes coming up. I'm trying to really grow the podcast, and so I'm not saying it's going to be daily because it's probably not going to be daily, but as much as possible, I'm going to be recording and just blabbering until I really get better at this, and hopefully start having guests on sooner than later, but we will see how that goes. So if you made it this far in the video, uh, or podcast slash episode, I want to thank you for watching. It really does mean a lot. When you're first starting out, you don't have a lot of fans, so the fans that you do have, they're very important. Um, but yeah, uh, and if you did make it this far, let's comment below who your favorite philosopher is, and if you do, maybe your favorite quote from them or something like that. But thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for the next episode.